Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins. I'm joined as always by Brandon Scott. You know him as B. Scott. Who are the biggest brands in college football? Who would you consider the blue bloods of the sport? Today we have a new take on conference realignment. If college football was split up by prestige, who would be in the league? Who would be in the sport's top league? We're gonna get into a big discussion today about that. B. Scott, you sent me a tweet last week. And it sparked all of this and sparked this conversation. I'm excited to get into it because this is going to be kind of a mixture of present and past success. Now, I will say, before we get into it, I did make the bold exclamation and proclamation before we started recording that I don't know that we'll have any changes. I feel that confident in the list that I made up prior to the show, because basically what this is going to end up being is kind of a brands, blue bloods tier list. Where it's just kind of a different...
It's not about who is in contention this year.
Yes. Let's make that abundantly clear to anyone who might copy in the comment section.
This has nothing to do with... I mean, it has a little bit to do with the here and now because, that's part of your brand is the here and now. But it has nothing to do with the teams that we think will be contenders for the national championship this year. Some of them on the list... I mean, yeah, they're a given, but this has nothing to do with that. This is just a fun exercise to determine who we think would be sitting in different leagues, similar to the European soccer leagues, Premier, Championship, so on and so on, based on history and brand size. It has nothing to do with if they're a contender this year or not.
Right, yeah, because it definitely was hard, like, going through the list, and because basically what we did is I came up with the list ahead of time, and then B. Scott and I are gonna go through it today, and he's gonna tell me why I'm wrong on a lot of them. So what kind of sparked this too is it kind of gives us an excuse to kind of bring this conversation back into the fold. I did want to touch on some of the conference realignment stuff. And because there's been a lot, B. Scott, that's happened since last summer when we talked about it. When we last
this conference realignment talk takes me back to our Cardinal College game day days, where that's all we would talk about and all the hypotheticals that could potentially happen, and none of the hypotheticals came true. So,
well, what's wild about it though is that, like, I used to. A lot of the things that were being brought up, there were a lot of things that were like nonsensical then. Like, I remember when they're like, could Boise State be in the Big East? Like, that's what was talked about then.
I had people saying, like, in a roundabout way, that Ball State's undefeated season, had they won the MAC and then gone on and played Boise State in the Idaho Potato Bowl or whatever it was at that time, if they would have beaten Boise State, they would have gotten an invitation then to join the Big East. Well, thankfully, none of that happened, and Ball State stayed put in the MAC, where they...
I mean, big props to the MAC that has not changed and through this whole...
That's the one conference. You're right. That's the one conference everybody's like,
yeah,
we're good.
Yeah, I was talking to my dad about it. I was like, that's what's kind of crazy is that, like, we because we've seen other conferences, like, just kind of like the Sun. We've seen like Conference USA teams go to the Sun Belt. Like, it happens at the Group of Five too. So, like, I'm surprised that I was like, I could see Western Kentucky in the MAC. I could see Memphis. But that would be the MAC.
If you look at the conference from the conference realignment perspective, is with Western Kentucky leaving Conference USA and coming down or coming to the MAC, would that be considered a down movement?
Right, I know, but I'm just saying, like, I'm just surprised that no movement has been made at all. That's
or
all
like, Conference USA has been losing teams. I'm surprised they haven't come in and asked Northern Illinois or Western Michigan or, some of the perennial MAC contenders.
Toledo
to join them. So yeah, it's the one conference that can just sit back and go, we're okay.
Hey, you know what? We're fine. Don't mess with our MAC.
Hey,
That's what it is. They don't want to play.
Everybody keeps saying they should send Indiana to the MAC or Purdue to the MAC. I mean, maybe the MAC would be like, we'll welcome them with open arms.
Yeah. Nobody wants. That's what it is. Nobody wants to play on Tuesdays in November. That's why they're like, you know what? We're good. We're not going to join the MAC.
Unfortunately, nobody wants to play on Tuesdays in November in front of a crowd of like 125 people.
Right. So what's happened since we talked last about conference realignment, which was UCLA and USC joining the Big Ten last year? We've had the ACC add Cal, SMU, and Stanford. That puts them at 17. So I'm kind of interested to see if they're going to add anyone else before next year. Because I know
they're going to add Notre Dame.
I don't know, but it's like it's just kind of odd because they're at 17. I know they don't play, like they don't have two divisions anymore. They're just lobbed all into one, so it kind of doesn't matter. But it's still kind of odd to be at 17. Although the Big Ten was at 11 for a long time, so I guess it doesn't matter. Oregon and Washington make the move. It was rumored last year, but that finally comes true. They moved to the Big Ten, expanding the conference to 18 teams. The Big 12 will add Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado's headed back to the Big 12. Then they'll also add Utah. That puts them at 16 teams, having added BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF this year. The Pac-12 is left with just Oregon State and Washington State. That ultimately disbands that conference.
I'm kind of shocked nobody wants them. Those are two good teams this year.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the presumed thing is that they're going to join the Mountain West. I kind of hate that for them because I feel like they're better. I know Boise State is in the Mountain West, and there are some good teams like Fresno State, in the Mountain West. But it just seems like that's beneath where Oregon State and Washington should be. No disrespect to the Mountain West, but
I start thinking about implications of how this plays out for other sports. Now, granted, it doesn't matter always because, like, I'm thinking of Oregon State and wrestling. Oregon State's got a proud wrestling program, and right now they compete in the Pac-12. Well, everybody is leaving the Pac-12. I mean, and then you got Stanford, who's off to the ACC. Is that correct?
Yeah,
the ACC doesn't have. Oh yeah. So Stanford's now in the ACC wrestling. So it's like, I guess you can still be a part. I guess in that sport, it's different. You can actually be a part of a conference that the rest of your athletic programs are not a part of. For instance, Missouri, who is an SEC program, has one of the top wrestling programs in the entire country. And for a long time after they left the Big 12, Big 12 said, nope, we don't want you for anything. So Missouri joined the MAC for wrestling and dominated that. And then Big 12 said, okay, yeah, I guess we'll have you back. So now Missouri's back in the Big 12. And then I guess you also then look at sports like hockey. Notre Dame is in the Big 10.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad that you brought that up because that's actually kind of the first. This is how confident I was that we weren't going to have any disagreements. I was like, let's add some questions in here just in case this is going to be a big, in case this is going to be a shorter show. But yeah, this brings me to this kind of first question here is: should college football be independent from the rest of college sports? Meaning that sports that keeping sports that play more frequently more regional. I know that I think it was the Missouri head coach when it was first announced that Washington and Oregon would move to the Big Ten. He was like, we got to think about the student athletes that play in like field hockey and even men's and women's basketball that have to travel because I guess thinking about it, like the trip from UCLA to Rutgers for a Tuesday night, college hoops game isn't going to happen super frequently, and we already have, Iowa flying halfway across the country to go to Rutgers for a Tuesday night college hoops game. So I guess like the crazy extremes aren't going to happen all the time, but it kind of feels like, especially now that like conferences are now meaning kind of, especially now with the expanded playoff, which I'm in favor of, they kind of mean less than they ever did. Really, except with the exception of meaning more money for TV. Like that's really all that conference means anymore. Because it really kind of doesn't matter, especially now that there's only going to be 4 power conferences. You might as well kind of make it its own thing, because college football kind of is its own thing. I think that's kind of what needs to happen, just to kind of break free and be like, okay, because I do think that like the Pac-12, I can see the Pac-12 coming back as like a basketball only conference, like maybe adding Gonzaga, maybe absorbing the WCC or whatever that one is, or the West Coast Conference. I think I can see them doing that, kind of like with what the Big East did for basketball after the football side of things went away. But yeah, it seems like that needs to be kind of the next step. It also seems like kind of what we're trending towards is like it kind of being its own thing, because some of these conferences are becoming so kind of nonsensical that, like, I understand that college football is the cash cow, but it almost is like making it kind of difficult for those other sports to even go about like some sense of normalcy. You're going to have them go, like I said, across the country. I know it doesn't happen super frequently, but you're going to have them going across the country for these kind of lesser sports that aren't as hyped up as much. So I think it does need to happen, and I think that's kind of what we're trending towards. But it's just kind of interesting to think about, because it's almost getting to a point where like it's going to end up, all these conferences are going to get so crazy that it kind of needs to be settled down for the other sports.
I mean, it technically already is almost its own entity. It is the only college sport sanctioned, like overall sanctioned college sport that does not have, the only college sport that does not have a championship that is crowned by the NCAA. The college football playoff is its own separate entity from the NCAA. The NCAA does not run the college football playoff or that championship. They assist. I know they assist. I've sat in on meetings on it, but it is not an NCAA championship. The NCAA recognizes it as the champion of Division I football, which is why, FCS is the NCAA crowned champion. I don't think you could ever go to a point where you say, okay, these teams are okay. You could be a part of a certain conference for football, and then for other sports, you can be in another conference. And like the Missouri thing, yes, they're in the SEC. Well, the SEC doesn't have wrestling. None of the other SEC schools, Oklahoma will now, but they don't have wrestling. So the SEC doesn't have a wrestling championship or anything like that. So yes, you have to go somewhere else. But basketball, I do not see. So for instance, I'll say UCLA and USC. Okay, you can play in the Big Ten for football, and if you want to stay in the Pac-12 for basketball and everything else, that's okay. That then I don't see that ever happening, because that then puts USC and UCLA at a potential, or in an Oregon and Washington at a potential advantage over the rest of the Pac-12 basketball teams, because they have the Big Ten TV revenue money from football coming in and helping feed that program. So recruiting budgets are higher, facilities are nicer, you have more top of the line everything. Then you have Oregon State, who's in football in the Mountain West and is not receiving the same kind of payout that those other schools are that are in the Big Ten for football. So I don't think you'll ever see that. You only see teams that will be in another conference for a sport that is not offered in the conference that they play in for football, i.e. Missouri, Oklahoma in the future. What you're going to probably end up seeing is, he brings up field hockey. Let's be honest, when you start getting down to those levels of sports, the Olympic sports like that, conferences are so wonky because of not every conference has this sport, or regional wise it makes more sense for us to be in this conference. Looking at Notre Dame playing in the Big Ten for hockey, it's really tough to look at field hockey and use that as an example. I think with basketball, what you're going to see is the schedules are going to be more geared towards, all right, Purdue, you're going to go out and have a West Coast swing where you're out there for 2 or 3 games over the course of a week and a half. And that's more possible nowadays because of how everything can be virtual. School, virtual. I mean, look, a lot of these guys that are on basketball and on basketball teams, they're traveling so much anyways that they take much lower course loads, and they're not in class all that much, but they still go about their course work, and they have tutors that are available to them and all of these other resources for them because of them representing the university and not being able to be in class. So virtual options are there. I mean, one thing we learned from COVID, everything can potentially be virtual.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's as big of an issue, and the schedule makers will adjust to that. I mean, look, in the NBA, you got teams all over the country, and like the Pacers will go on a West Coast swing and be gone for a while,
right? But you
come back.
But you're not dealing, like, they don't have class to go to, though.
No, but
right. That's the only thing that I'm saying. Like,
and when I'm saying you have a West Coast swing, is because if you're taking class, you can take classes virtually. You have the tutor help. You have all this other stuff. You go out on the West Coast and you spend a week and a half out there. You're not traveling back and forth as much as you do now. So honestly, it's going to be, they're away from campus longer, but at the same time, they're not going to be traveling as much. I mean, that I could be totally wrong, and that's not the model that they would use.
I think that makes sense.
That makes the most sense. Any human it's not good for any human to be traveling across the country that much over and over and over again. So figure it out. Like, okay, UCLA is going to be on a 3-game homestand against 3 different teams, and I'm not smart enough to figure.
And I mean, some of it's going to be what it normally was anyway. Like, you're still going to have UCLA and Washington who would have played anyway. Right. You're going to have Oregon playing USC like they would have anyway. So I mean, and you're going to have Oregon, Nebraska. That's like not any different than Iowa, Rutgers. So I mean,
right.
So yeah, no, I didn't think about like the money trickling into like the different sports. So like that does make sense when you're saying like that's why you can't have it be its own thing. So that I do get that side of things.
I mean, you can technically have college football be its own thing, but you could never have it be, all right, conferences are one thing for football and then conferences are another way for everything else because of just the way football funds every other sport.
Right. Well, let's go ahead and get into kind of the thing that started this whole line of thinking, and that is a tweet that you sent me from the College Basketball Report. It was an idea that originated with Projection Sports on Twitter. I just don't say X. I'm sorry. It's Twitter. Well, hey,
if you actually go into Twitter and you go to Creator Studio or Media Studio in X, when it opens up, it's still Twitter Studio with the bird.
That's funny.
So it's still alive.
So it's the tweet was if the NCAA basketball adopted the promotion relegation system like they do in the Premier League for soccer, those leagues were compiled based on a combo of all time and recent success. So like at the Premier League there were 16 college basketball teams. I think there would need to be more. If you're going to do that for college basketball, I think they probably truncated it because of the exercise and just not having 800 teams on there. But at their Premier League, they had the likes of Kansas, UConn, UCLA, IU, UNC, Duke, Kentucky. The next tier down at the championship level, that was 20 teams. They had the likes of Virginia, Illinois, Purdue, Texas, Baylor, Gonzaga. League 1 was Oregon, Texas Tech, Butler, San Diego State. League 2 was VCU, Western Kentucky, Florida State, Miami, Auburn, Wichita State, and St. Mary's. And then after that, everyone was sorted into geographical districts. So really like that idea. When you sent that to me, I was like, we got to do this for college football. And that's what we're going to do today. Same rules apply. So yeah, we're gonna do a college football promotion relegation exercise. The same rules apply as in that tweet, where we're gonna use a combination of recent success as well as past success, and we need to come to a consensus. This is like the NFL tier list that we did. A couple of weeks ago, where like the idea is for us to come to an agreement on who is at each level. So let's go ahead and get started with the Premier League. For this exercise, it's composed of 16 teams. I came up with a really clever name for this level of for the Premier League. It's called the College Football Playoff. I would like to see that. Look, if this happened, I would love to see them actually keep that name and then the BCS, which is what I have for the other league, like the lower level. I would love to see them keep those two names. I think they do kind of make sense. Look, Ted Lasso put it best. He's like, wait, so when we move up, it's the Premier League, but when we get sent back down, it's called the Championship. So wait, which one is actually better to be in? So I was like, you know what? You have the College Football Playoff, and then if you get relegated, you go down to the BCS. When we get started with this Premier League exercise, I think there's no disputing the 5 College Football Playoff champions on this list. You've got Georgia, who won in 2022 and 23, Alabama, who won in 16, 18, and 21, LSU, who won in 2020, Clemson, who won in 17 and 19, and Ohio State, who won in 2015. 24/7 Sports ranked the biggest brands in college football. All 5 teams are in the top 6. I think those top 5 are undisputed. Like they need to be there. And I'm going to be going to that brands list quite a bit. So far, so good, B. Scott?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at just the recent success and the amount of the brand image itself, Georgia is there. Clemson, I'm okay with it. I'm good.
Yeah.
With that.
So who was that 6 team? Because I said those 5 made up this 5 of the 6. That 6 team was the Oklahoma Sooners. They have 4 college football playoff appearances, the most of any team. Yeah, you can interject whenever we get to one that maybe you disagree with. Oklahoma, so the Oklahoma Sooners, 4 college football playoff appearances, the most of any team that has not won a title. They are 0-4 in the college football playoff. They were the 2000 BCS national champions. They played in 3 more natties as well against USC, LSU, and Florida. They've largely been the Big 12 representative in both the BCS and college football playoff, which means they're at the top of their conference all the time. 9 of 22 BCS appearances. They're second only to Ohio State overall. And they're 9th out of 22 when it comes to BCS appearances. No, wait, I really confused myself on that one. They have 9 BCS appearances. And then they've got 5 college football playoff appearances. Oh, okay, that's what it was. They have 9 of the 12 Big 12. I can't. 9 of the 12 BCS appearances for the Big 12 is what they have, and then 4 of the 5 college football playoff appearances for the Big 12. That's what that meant.
And then they have countless Heisman Trophy winners. I mean,
right? They
went on a run here recently where they had multiple quarterbacks win Heisman's and then end up going number 1 overall.
Right.
So
big
time.
Right.
Big time brand.
Right. TCU was the first non-Oklahoma Big 12 team to go in the college football playoff. So I think those 6 teams are non-negotiable. And then I think from here on out, that's where we kind of get into the debate. The next 2 teams I have are Notre Dame and Michigan, and I get it. They've crumbled on the big stage, but they're the only... Historically, too, yeah. Even when you go back...
No, I'm saying historically speaking, these are major programs.
Oh, yeah. They're the only 2 programs we haven't mentioned with multiple college football playoff appearances. They're 6th and 7th in number of New Year's 6 appearances with 4 each. Michigan also has 5 BCS game appearances. Notre Dame has 4. Notre Dame is 12th. Michigan is 16th on the 24/7 college football brand list. They admit that that's low for Michigan, but I think they've only been doing the exercise for a couple of years, so they're maybe because Michigan's just kind of recently gotten back to being a national contender, that might be why they're so low on that list. But it's low for both, in my opinion, as far as top
look
brands.
At Michigan. Michigan really didn't become a power program until Bo Schembechler.
Yeah, that was like the 80s, right? Yeah, I think it was
70s or 80s.
Yeah.
No, because but they were kind of struggling. I mean, that Ohio State Michigan rivalry did not start until it was Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler going at it. So,
and both have a reasonable amount of recent and past success to have them both here. So I think that they're both in pretty convincingly. Oregon is the next domino to fall, in my opinion. Top 10 brand according to that brand's list. They have a college football playoff appearances, five BCS appearances, they are 3-2 in those 5 BCS appearances, and they have 3 New Year's Six appearances where they're 2-1. So I think Oregon's there. I know originally I wondered if they would be one of the teams that I would debate a little bit more, but I think with those numbers, because they have the success, especially here recently, where I think they're on that list.
Yeah, and then you always have that one program or that one team that's going to slide into that Premier League spot because of the money that they can bring to the table.
Right.
And this is the instance there with Oregon being Nike.
Yeah.
Essentially. It's a tough one to put in there, but because of the Nike being so correlated with Oregon and the uniform.
I was gonna say that's what helps too is the uniforms, all that stuff.
Everything that goes into that. And for a while that was like one of the biggest reasons people in the Midwest and on the East Coast would stay up past midnight was to watch that Chip Kelly Oregon offense just fly all over the field. And yeah, that speaks for volumes right there.
Then so we're at 9 so far. I think we're pretty locked in on those 9. Then you have kind of the kings of the BCS. I've got Florida. They're 5th all time with 7 BCS appearances, 5-2 in those games, 2 national championships, 2-1 in their 3 New Year's Six bowl games. I've got USC, 4th in BCS appearances with 7, 6-1 in those games. They have 1 outright national championship. I know there's another one where they split with LSU during the BCS years. And then they also have 3 New Year's Six appearances as well. I didn't know that. I thought they were pretty low on New Year's Six appearances, but I forgot they made the Rose Bowl a couple of times with Sam Darnold, I think. And then you've got Florida State, 3rd all time in BCS appearances with 8, 2 national titles, 1 college football playoff appearance, 3 New Year's Six appearances, and those are all top 20 brands, the ones that I just listed. So,
yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with any of those. Florida, you look at even non-BCS, they've got a handful of national championships. Just that brand alone with Gatorade.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, you look at that. I mean, I guess I also got to say, if a documentary has ever been made about your program, you belong on this list. And if anybody's been on Netflix here recently, the Florida Gators were on there with the Urban Meyer, Tim Tebow era.
Yeah, I still need to watch that. I was trying to. Right, I heard because it doesn't
include.
There's so
much that they did not go into.
That's what I heard.
They left off all the they kind of oh yeah, there was off-field issues. Yeah, but that's how you lost.
That's what half of this should be.
I mean, we don't even touch on Aaron Hernandez.
Right.
But he's got his own documentary on Netflix, so that's okay.
True. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was trying to decide. I ended up watching because I still hadn't watched the Malice at the Palace one. So that's why I ended up watching. But yeah, I do need to watch that one. My last 4 in. So we've got 12 so far. Texas, 8th on 24/7's brand list, 4 BCS appearances, 2 BCS championship appearances. They won the title with their epic 2006 Rose Bowl win over USC, one of the most iconic games in college football history. They won their only New Year's Six appearance, so I think they've got a big enough brand that even though it's not been a ton of success here recently, they belong on the list.
And I think they would have won a second one had Colt McCoy not gotten injured in the first quarter, like on the first drive of that game against Alabama.
I don't care what Greg McElroy says. I agree with you because McElroy's like, well, did Colt McCoy play defense? They couldn't stop our offense. I'm like, bro.
Their offense couldn't move.
Right. Yeah, their defense was always on the field.
Their defense was exhausted.
Their defense was gassed because Garrett Gilbert was slinging the pill all over the place. Then I've got Penn State, 13th on the 24/7 brand list. They have the most New Year's Six appearances of any team without a college football playoff appearance with 4, and they're 3-1 in those games. Then I have Auburn, who's 21st on the 24/7 brand list. 24/7's brand list. They have 3 BCS appearances, 2 BCS championship appearances. They won the 2011 BCS title, and they have 2 New Year's Six appearances. I saw you shaking your head a bit. What are we thinking about Auburn?
It's a little iffy. I just don't know who I would replace them with.
Yeah, that's kind of where
this next team on the list. I'm like, no,
you're foaming at the mouth for that one. So let's go ahead and get into it. The last team that I've got in the Premier League, the top brand list, or like the top tier on the brand list, the final team that I have there is the Wisconsin Badgers.
I don't get it.
Five BCS appearances. They've got a 2-3 record. They have 3 New Year's Six appearances. They're a 2-1 record. I was originally going to only put the 2-1 record, but I was like, you can put the 1 record. You got to put the fact that they were the record in the BCS as well. They're not ranked on the brand list, but they stood out to me as being successful both across the BCS and college football playoff era. Michigan State was ranked on the brands list and has arguably more recent success, but they didn't have as much prolonged success. So that's why I've got Wisconsin here, because I think they may not be as big as some of the brands that I've left off this top tier, but at the same time, they are a big enough brand where their prolonged success kind of also puts them in this tier of where they've been not only a big brand, but also successful.
I mean, like Auburn, I can live with because you had a guy by the name of Bo Jackson play there. You got some memorable moments. Cam Newton, just
the kick six.
The kick six. I mean, a lot of that. Wisconsin, though, prior to 1990, 1991, was essentially irrelevant. They struggled as a program until Barry Alvarez came in and breathed new life into that program and got them to that first Rose Bowl. I remember that vividly. I lived in Madison, Wisconsin at that time.
I forgot about that. You did live in Madison.
It is, I will say, brand-wise, in that city, it's massive. It is that city's identity to a degree as far as sports go, because there's no professional sports teams in Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, I was like, in Wisconsin?
In Madison, Wisconsin. Yeah. The closest thing to a professional football team you have there is the Green Bay Packers. So when Wisconsin made it to the Rose Bowl in 91, like the whole town turned red. Like I was in kindergarten at school, everybody wore red. It was a big, big, big deal. However, when I'm looking at this list, the one team to me that you left off of this Premier League list that deserves to be there is the Miami Hurricanes. Like, name me Wisconsin's national championship. When does Wisconsin win a national championship?
But here's the thing. The
U has had such big successes. National championships, documentaries made about them. That brand, I mean, that team goes by just the U. If somebody says, "Oh yeah, I'm rooting for the U this weekend," you know exactly who they are talking about.
What era was that? What decade was that?
80s,
it was
90s.
No, it was the 80s, early 90s,
early 2000s.
Right, but so we're talking about okay, so they had 20 years of success, but they've had about that same amount of time of futility. They have not been a national, like they haven't been on the national scale in forever. I mean, yes, maybe the brand itself, yes. I can't really dispute you on the brand itself, but remember, this is based on not just past success and your brand. This is also based on recent success. And the Miami Hurricanes have been absent from the national picture for so long. They haven't even been close. They've been to one New Year's Six game. They did go to 4 BCS games. They did win a national championship, but we're getting to a point where that was 25 years ago. So I mean, we're right now. It's like
even been to a national. They made it to a national championship game,
right? But they've
never made the college football playoff.
But they've been on the doorstep. They've been there. They've been in the top. I mean, Miami struggles whenever it seems like whenever Miami gets into the top 10, they lose. Like and then they drop back down. They've been middling in the 10 when they've actually been ranked. They've been kind of floating in that 15 to 25 window. That's where the likes of like this season Duke is. Does Duke belong on this list? They've had I mean that's an erroneous claim. But I'm saying the likes of Duke this year is ranked where Miami typically is. I know Miami is ranked this year, but when Miami has been ranked, they haven't spent a ton of time at the top of the list, whereas Wisconsin has been to New Year's Six Bowls, has been to be the same number, almost the same as many BCS games, one more BCS game than Miami's been to. They've been to more New Year's Six games. Yeah, they haven't gone to the national championship and they haven't gone to the college football playoff, but neither is Miami.
But I mean, I just feel like there should be more. I don't know, leverage placed on national championships won.
It's not like it's one that was almost 20 years ago, but that's the thing too. It's like, okay, that one happened, but it's not like Miami won 4 national championships in the 90s and then I left them off this list. They won one in 2002 or 2001, I can't remember which, and then haven't really been close to that since.
It's hard. It's hard for me to accept Wisconsin on that list when Miami's sitting there and you can think of just, I don't know. It's tough for me to accept it. I just feel like, I guess I'm looking more into history when I look at a lot of these programs. And the thing is, like, I give Auburn the pass of being up there because Auburn has history.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn has huge moments. Wisconsin doesn't have that deep of history. Wisconsin doesn't have those huge moments. Yeah, they've won the Rose Bowl. They've won the Big Ten. And they've had one Heisman Trophy winner in Ron Dane. Miami, though, you look at the name that the players that they've put out. It's the list goes on and on and on and on. And even the coaches. I don't know. It's really tough for me to not have Miami on this portion.
Now, there is one thing that you said that I think does swing my vote. And that is, if you've had a documentary made about you, then that kind of, because like I don't agree in the sense that like this shouldn't, because like this exercise isn't just about your brand. It's also about like your success, and Miami hasn't had a lot of recent success, but they do have the Natty. They were really good in the BCS. They were good in the BCS years. They just fell off towards the end of the BCS, like really since like 2004, 2005, like shortly after their national championship loss to Ohio State, is when they kind of fell off as a program.
They really fell off as a program when Larry Coker got old,
mm-hmm.
kind of started phoning it in, and then left.
Right.
Then they thought they could reignite it with Mark Richt. Mark Richt was too washed up.
Yeah.
Didn't connect. They just kept going after coaches that just aren't.
And you also brought up
capable of putting together a program in Miami. It's
Right.
It's a different culture there. Very different in that, especially in that area of Coral Gables.
You also brought up the whole factor of money too, and it's hard to believe that if there was a Premier League, they would not bring in a brand like Miami, who is 10th on the brands list.
Though,
so
one knock I have on Miami, other than the no recent success, they do not have their own stadium.
True.
And they do not draw in the same crowd that they used to at the old Orange Bowl.
Right. So yeah, I think I will go ahead and put Miami in the Premier League. I think they would be there. I kind of was like, you know what?
You got to have convicts versus Catholics in the Premier League.
Right. That's fair. That's fair. All right. So to recap,
but what Wisconsin? You have 21 teams now.
No, Wisconsin. So Wisconsin then drops down to the next league. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
I totally agree. Wisconsin should be at the top of this next league.
Right.
Hands down, Wisconsin is a top tier team in this next league.
Right.
Fighting for their position into the Premier League.
So to recap, the Premier League would be made up of Georgia, Bama, Clemson, LSU, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Michigan, Oregon, Florida, USC, Florida State, Texas, Penn State, Auburn, Miami. Those are the teams that we have on that level. So the next level, the championship, or the Bowl Championship Series, otherwise known as the BCS. 20 teams at this level. For starters, I started with the teams that are on the brands list that college football would want at the higher level and would want to move up the quickest. So we do have Wisconsin here by virtue of Miami moving up. I had Miami on here too. I'm glad you didn't bring up this next team. They're the only team in the top 10 that I think was 1,000% not worth moving up to the Premier League, and that is Texas A&M. Texas A&M is 7th on the brands list. They have 2 BCS / New Year's Six appearances and a 1-1 record. They've won 1 BCS or New Year's Six bowl game since like the late 90s. Like that's and they've not even.
That's an inflated brand. That's a brand that at any moment could pop.
Right. When you said documentary, I thought maybe you might advocate for him because the documentary about Johnny Manziel. So I was like,
no, that's a documentary about a player.
Right. Yeah. So Texas A&M is at that level. Wisconsin's at that level. North Carolina, they're 14th on the brands list. 1 New Year's Six appearance.
Football though?
Right. Yeah. I'm with you. They were very high on the brands list, in my opinion. I think the recent success that they have, I don't know that brand has a lot to do with actually the football team.
Yeah.
They talked about Mac Brown coming in and breathing new life. I was like, okay, I'm on board because they're good now, and they are a good brand, even if it is like they're a good brand to have. They've got a good fan base. They've all that stuff. So I think
I will say they were one of the first teams outside of Oregon to really go big on the alternate helmets, at least.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the chrome dome with the big baby blue Tar Heel footprint on the side. If you're not telling me you did not play as North Carolina on NCAA college football 2014 just so you could use those chrome dome helmets, you're lying.
Right.
Everybody at least did it once.
So yeah, they're on that list. Ole Miss, they're 15th on the brands list. 3 New Year's Six appearances.
Okay.
Tennessee, 18th on the brands list. They got their first New Year's Six appearance and win last season. They also have 2 BCS appearances and 1 BCS national title. And again, this is more strictly, this is who the Premier League would want. They'd be like, okay, we're cool if you guys win. We don't care about anything else. You guys are big enough brands. You're noteworthy enough. You should move up. And then the final team in that kind of category is Michigan State. They're 22nd on the brands list. 3 New Year's Six appearances, 2-1 record in those games, 1 college football playoff appearance. They did only have 1 BCS appearance, so their success is kind of like their success is more recent than Wisconsin's is.
I would have an issue because, well, I mean, hey, you look in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, that Michigan State program had some big time players, and they were led by a guy named Nick Saban. I mean, yeah, none of the players really panned out. Like they had some big time wide receivers come through there. Maybe none of them panned out in the NFL, but that's not because they weren't talented. Yeah, Michigan State's a tough one, especially with everything going on with them right now. That's a brand you just want to walk away from.
I'm not going to lie. That's also part of the reason I didn't pick them to be the Premier League. Because I was like, I don't know. I know that's not the brand of the team's fault, but like
Michigan State as a whole, there's a lot of just bad vibes from the athletic department in general, whether it be basketball players covering up like sexual assault allegations and Tom Izzo wearing a ribbon in unity for the victims, or same issues within the football program. And then you look deeper down into the athletic department and the whole Larry Nassar situation with USA Gymnastics. And I don't know, it's cringy. It's a cringy brand right now.
Yeah. So now then after I got through with those teams, I was trying to round out the college football playoff appearances. So we've got Washington, who does have a Rose Bowl win in 2001. Sorry to bring that one up, B. Scott. Only
they were good.
They were. Only other Pac-12 team besides Oregon to make the college football playoff. They also have 3 New Year's Six appearances. Cincinnati, 2 BCS appearances. First Group of 5 school to make the college football playoff. They're now in the Big 12. They have 2 New Year's Six appearances. And yeah, I did kind of put a little bit of an emphasis on if you were a Group of 5 team and you played your way in to being a Power 5 team, then I think you deserve to be on kind of a heightened level. Because I know, and also, I mean, that's also those Power 5 conferences recognizing not just how good your program is, but also recognizing like your brand, because there's also other programs that haven't moved up that maybe might be worthy of doing so. TCU's there as well, 2 BCS appearances. They won one of them. They were on the doorstep of the first college football playoff, and of course made it to the title game last year before getting shellacked by Georgia. But they're on that list. And then I went to the multiple New Year's Six appearances. I've got Baylor on that list. 3 New Year's Six appearances.
Same boat as Michigan State.
Weird vibes.
Program.
1 BCS appearance.
It's getting better.
Yes.
Baylor is at least.
1 and 3 all time in those New Year's Six and BCS appearances. Oklahoma State, 2 New Year's Six appearances, 1 BCS appearance, 2-1 record in those games. UCF, 2 New Year's Six appearances, 1 BCS appearance. 2-1 record in those games, made both those appearances as a member of the AAC.
What year did they crown themselves national champion?
Yeah, it was 2017 or 18, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the year.
Right.
Frost led that team to a national title.
Yeah.
Wink, wink.
I also went with Utah, 2 New Year's Six appearances, 2 BCS appearances, won both games in the BCS as a member of the Mountain West. And while we're talking about teams that rose out of the Group of 5, like Utah, TCU, UCF, I want to include a team on this list that is still a member of the Group of 5, but deserves to be in the conversation. That is Boise State.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I mean, you have the biggest upset, biggest trick play in the history of college football.
2 BCS appearances as a member of the WAC, won both of them, including an iconic win over Oklahoma. They have, and not just that game. I mean, yeah, that game obviously put them on the map. But they have so many wins, so many marquee wins over Power 5 schools. They've
going into Virginia Tech one year to kick off this season.
Right.
And Kellen Moore was the quarterback at Boise State.
They've beaten.
I still to this day at the beginning of the college football season, when I pull up Time Hop, there's a tweet that pops up about that game, and I'm saying, could this potentially be Kellen Moore's beginning of his Heisman campaign?
Yeah. Well, and not just like that, they've beaten Oregon, they've beaten Georgia, like they've beaten some of the programs.
They beat Oregon, and then LeGarrette Blount decided to punch a guy.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean,
it worked out well because he was suspended for the next game, which was at Purdue.
They also have one New Year's Six appearance as a member of the Mountain West. So I think they've got one of the more of the group of five schools. I think they've got the most iconic brand of the group of five, schools when you're talking about that. And then now to kind of round it out, I've got multiple BCS appearances. I've got Virginia Tech, 6 BCS appearances, 7th all time. They are 1-5 in those games, but they do have the same amount of BCS appearances as Alabama and more than LSU and Oregon. So they have been on kind of, I mean, the brand, but they've also been on a
You're kind of a dumpster fire right now,
right? But I think they've been good enough to get there.
Their entrance is one of the most iconic entrances in college football. Enter Sandman. It's not the same in the middle of the day, but at night that it's electrifying. So yeah. That gives you props there.
Stanford, 5 BCS appearances, 2-3 record in those games.
This would be the team that would eventually fall, because right now they are absolute garbage.
Yeah. West Virginia, 3 BCS appearances, 3-0 record in those games. Iowa, 2 BCS appearances, 1-1 record. They do have 1 New Year's Six appearance. Nebraska, 2 BCS appearances. They won the 2000 Fiesta Bowl. 5 championships in the poll era, the most of any team we haven't already listed. Louisville, 2 BCS appearances, the only team left with multiple BCS New Year's Six appearances. So before we recap the championship league or the BCS league, what do you have? Is there any teams you want to move up or down?
Michigan State's one, just because their success, I don't know, felt like it came in years that were the Big Ten was just down.
I don't think I think they're good enough, especially having made the college football playoff, having made the New Year's Six. I don't think they're budging, in my opinion. I think, and they are a big enough brand still.
Yeah.
But again, and it's because it might also be because of all of their sports, because they're good at basketball, because they're good at.
It's kind of like they fall under that category of North Carolina.
Right. So yeah, I don't think I want to move Michigan State.
Okay. I mean, let me need to look at the list, because that's a big list.
Mm-hmm. Well, the recap is at the bottom of on the outline. Yeah.
Let's see. I guess UCF for me would be UCF and Louisville are the two that I'm looking at. I feel like, Louisville, I'm more comfortable with keeping on this level than UCF. I think as a brand as a whole, the UCF brand, I don't think even UCF knows what their brand is. They try to claim that they are the biggest school to put people in space, which statistically speaking, they are not. They I don't know. They're just kind of all over the place. And I think you get docked when you try to claim yourselves as national champions, and everybody just kind of turns it into a joke. It's tough. Because they've had some good years, but I think with them, we're looking at just one really good year, because they made technically a New Year's Six.
They've made multiple New Year's Six bowls, and they made a BCS bowl as well. They made the Fiesta Bowl in 2014. They're one of the group of they're one of the group of 5 schools that played their way, were a big enough deal to be invited to the Big 12.
Yeah,
I'll tell you. There's one team that I would consider moving up. But that's only if it's with UCF. Okay, I don't think Louisville moves, but there's only one team that I would replace UCF with.
And who's that?
You guess, because you talked about them before we went on the air. Who's at that next level?
Yeah. Colorado.
Prime time. I think if this league were made today, I think that you put, because It's a little tough. I know Colorado. We talk
Colorado
about
at
like
least has some history.
they have some history. They've got
They've got that big upset Hail Mary over Michigan.
They've got. I think they have a national championship.
They have a national championship back when the national champion was like crowned by the polls.
And when you kind of think of, I mean, I don't like to go kind of a brand that has just kind of just happened, but I mean, there's no sexier team right now than Colorado. Everybody loves Colorado. Everybody, if this league were to be made today, it would include Colorado because of
you think
Coach
about it,
Prime.
even when conference realignment really started kicking off back in the early 2000s, I mean, I'm talking about like 2008, 2009, 2010, when it really started happening. Colorado was one of the first teams that got poached because they had a brand name to them. The Pac-12 wanted Colorado. They wanted to get in that brand within their hold. And now Colorado's going back to the Big 12. But Colorado itself has had a brand. They've had their moments. They have a national championship. If you can look back on a team and that you're not a huge fan of, and you could name at least one player, I mean, Cordell Stewart comes to mind with Colorado. And then there was a Fiesta Bowl, I believe, between Oregon and Colorado that was just an outstanding game. I think that was back early 2000s, I want to say. But it really showcased a different style of football, because I knew some people that went out to it and they said, I've never seen speed in football quite like what those two teams just put on the field. I think I would bump UCF down and bring Colorado up.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. So the championship BCS teams would be A&M, Wisconsin, UNC, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Michigan State, Washington, Cincinnati, TCU, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Utah, Boise State, Virginia Tech, Stanford, West Virginia, Iowa, Nebraska, Louisville, Colorado.
Oh, then you're automatically putting in the Nebraska and Colorado rivalry there.
Right, true. Also true. All right, we'll go a little bit quicker with these next two because there's two more we've got left. League One. It's 20 teams as well. I've got the remainder of 24/7's biggest brands list. So UCLA, Michigan State, Maryland, South Carolina. Those were like, I don't know. I mean, sure.
You already had Michigan State.
Oh, sorry. Who did I say? I said UCLA, Mississippi State, Maryland.
Oh, you said Michigan State instead of Mississippi State.
Oh, okay. Mississippi State. Yeah. UCLA, Mississippi State, Maryland, South Carolina. Then we've had the BCS college football playoff for about 25 years now, those two different entities. So I didn't want to really go into the murkiness of the days prior to the BCS, where you had like teams claiming national championships and doing all crazy stuff with the polls. But I did want to add a couple schools from those times. Minnesota, the most poll era national championships which is from poll eras 1936 to present. Of any team we haven't mentioned, they've got 4. Pitt is the only school we haven't mentioned with multiple poll era titles, 2, and a New Year's 6 appearance. So those 2 teams are on the list. Then I went with the remaining teams with 1 New Year's 6 bowl win: Georgia Tech, Houston, Iowa State, Tulane. Then I got the remaining teams with 1 BCS bowl win: Kansas and Oregon State. Then I went with the best of the teams that made the BCS/New Year's 6 teams I feel like should be in this exercise. I've got Arkansas, I've got Northern Illinois, I've got Kansas State. Northern Illinois has 5 MAC championship game wins, the most of any school in the conference. They also have a BCS appearance. You've got
that was a big deal. That was a big deal.
Right. You've got Kansas State with 3 BCS/New Year's 6 appearances. Fresno State, which is not quite on the level of Boise State. They've never made it to the BCS or New Year's 6, but it's a program that has had their share of upsets over Power 5 schools over the years. And then I did a kind of a shout out for you, B. Scott. North Dakota State, I think, should be included in this exercise.
Oh yeah,
they're 21st all time in wins. They're 21st all time in wins. as a program. 9 FCS titles, all coming since 2011. So they've been so good over the last, several decades, or last couple of decades here. So I think they deserve to be there. Syracuse, the only Power 5 school not listed in the top 40 wins all time. They are 31st in wins, just ahead of Arkansas and Wisconsin. And then I wanted to shout out Appalachian State. Talk about brands. They have one of the most iconic wins all time with their upset of Michigan. They have 3 FCS titles under their belt. Talk about some of the smaller schools with bigger brands. North Dakota State, Appalachian State, I think they deserve to kind of etch their name in here. Now, we do need to add one more school because with moving Colorado. Oh wait, no, never mind. We moved UCF down, so UCF is also at this level. I was like, wait, we have to add somebody because Colorado's up at the higher level, but UCF drops down to this level as well.
Only one change. I propose.
Oh yeah,
I would bump Fresno State
down or up?
Down.
Down.
Really? I would bump Fresno State down.
In favor of.
And I would move Purdue up.
There it is. I knew it was coming.
Hear me out. Purdue does have a BCS bowl appearance.
True.
Dating back before they called it the New Year's Six, Purdue did make some of those bowls, playing Georgia twice. Purdue does have a history of big time names. They are considered the cradle of quarterbacks. When you go back into history, you look at that. Recently you have the success you see of Drew Brees. It's hard. I don't know as much about the Fresno State program, obviously, but do they have that kind of a lineage anywhere?
I'll say this. Would you rather move Fresno State, who has had their share of upsets over the Power 5 over the years, or would you rather have Syracuse, who is the only Power 5 school not listed in the top 40 wins all time? Because
I guess I'll say Syracuse then. But
okay.
Syracuse,
I know that's not a great move after Syracuse just beat Purdue
and Fresno State.
and Fresno State just beat Purdue. We're moving one of those two out for Purdue because I do agree with you with Drew Brees, BCS appearance, cradle of quarterbacks. You do have a point. I know I was gonna give you crap for being a big old homer, but those are good points.
And then just as recent as this past year,
making it to the Big Ten
championship game. And then now if we're going to move Colorado up because of prime time, the brand for Purdue is shifting a little bit as well with Ryan Walters. It's a different, trust me, it is becoming a different brand. It's becoming a cooler, over time here, over the past few years, Purdue has become a cooler brand because of the likes of some players.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Because of the likes of some players like Rondell Moore, that the Tyler Trent game. Purdue also has, out of all teams that have not been ranked in the top 10 recently, actually overall in history, Purdue has the most wins over top 3 teams when not ranked in the top 25.
Bro, I was gonna say the spoiler makers also puts them on the brands list. I think that does. I think you're right. I think one of those teams has to go.
The thing what keeps me there with Syracuse is oh my gosh, I cannot remember the player's name.
Donovan McNabb?
No, way back.
I was like
running back.
Ernie Davis? Or am I thinking of
I think you're in the right ballpark. He was drafted 1 pick behind Len Dawson, Purdue quarterback.
Okay.
Who went on to win.
Okay, so we're bumping Fresno State then.
I would bump Fresno State just because, their biggest brand name that they put out there is Derek Carr.
And David Carr.
And David Carr.
And Devontae Adams.
Okay. But are they bigger names than Donovan McNabb, Dwight Freeney?
Honestly, didn't even think about Dwight Freeney being from Syracuse until right now. So, yeah. We'll move.
Wasn't his name Ernie Brown?
That sounds right.
They made a movie about him.
Right. We're probably messing it up a bunch, but I
know.
do.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
His name is completely blanking me because I just saw it. That's the thing. I think that's why it's blanking me, because I just saw his name the other day. The other night when watching Purdue versus Syracuse.
Right. Okay, so in summary, League One is composed of UCLA, Mississippi State, Maryland, South Carolina, Minnesota, Pitt, Georgia Tech, Houston, Iowa State, Tulane, Kansas, Oregon State, Arkansas, Colorado, or not Colorado. We moved Colorado up. UCF, North. I knew I was going to do that at some point. Northern Illinois, Kansas State, North Dakota State, Syracuse, Appalachian State, and Purdue. Which means League Two, not really a whole lot of discussion because we've almost ranked like 70 teams here. I've got 20 teams only because I was left with like 20 teams to like fill this out. I was like, oh, hey, there's when I look at the rest of the Power Five, here's like almost 20 teams. So I had the rest of the Power Five here: Boston College, Duke, NC State, Virginia, Wake Forest, BYU, Texas Tech, Illinois, Indiana, Northwestern, Rutgers, Arizona State. Which, I mean, heck, Rutgers, talk about losing your brand. You were the birthplace of college football, and you're not even, you're barely on this list.
The Rutgers still wishes the Big East existed.
Right. Arizona State, Arizona, Cal, Washington State, Kentucky, Missouri, Fresno State. Then I've got a group of 5 teams that have made the New Year's Six: Western Michigan and Memphis. And then we've also got Fresno State down there, too. So,
yeah. The only other one that's down on that list that's you kind of like, it's tough to see them down there, but yeah, they can stay down there, is Wake Forest, because they have made it to the BCS. But
that is true, and I thought you were going to say NC State, because I feel like NC State with Russell Wilson, Phillip Rivers.
The thing is, anytime NC State has a good quarterback, that quarterback transfers and has success elsewhere. I mean, Devin Leary
where did
Russell Wilson went to Wisconsin.
Yeah, went to Wisconsin. So that's basically where we end the list. Like I said, I think we named like 70 plus programs here. So last kind of thing here, we'll go quick.
If people agree, we want to know if people agree with us.
Yeah.
Let us know where we went wrong.
Right.
I'm sure we screwed up somewhere.
Yeah.
70 teams.
Yeah, that's a lot. So real quick, maybe just a short response on this one, just because I'm kind of curious, because B. Scott, you did this. You sent me that tweet. You got me all excited to see something like this. Would something like this work in college football? I know probably logistically no, but at this point I kind of hope it does. I hope this is like, because honestly,
logistics are out the window. We've already gone over that.
Right, exactly. So I would love to see this in college football. I would love to see this. I know that, like, but I mean, honestly though, like, that's the thing. Like, there's like the money's already there. You know what I mean? Like, we're now kind of trending that way anyway, with kind of like the super leagues that we have in the Big Ten and the SEC. So we're kind of already trending that direction. Conferences, we've now. I mean, I know the only thing that makes conferences any sort of relevant anymore is
conference champions.
No, not even that anymore. That doesn't even matter.
The conference champions get an automatic bid almost into the college football playoff.
Not really. If you win, if like the years that like Penn State won the Big Ten,
I'm talking. Yeah. I guess I'm looking at the future.
Right.
Because
right.
Everything is right now is geared towards the future.
Right. But even then, like now, even with the 12-team playoff, like I think, I mean, you're still going to have years where like, yeah, Penn State wins the Big Ten, but you're also going to see. I mean, you're going to see plenty of teams like as at-large bids too that like didn't win their conference championships, but I think like conferences are now mean the least that they've ever meant, and I think you could kind of switch to this, be like, okay, now all you programs are on your own. Figure out what you're going to do. You can level up to the Premier League, get all that money from being at the highest level, or you can drop back down. I think honestly, I mean, talking about like really the TV money being all that matters, and that's the only reason like the conferences matter, because certain conferences have more prestige. I think like the money in a Premier League cut type setup for college football would be off the charts. Yeah, like, and that's what we're trying.
I think it would surpass the NFL.
Yeah, that's where we're trending with the fact that you're going to be able to turn on the TV in mid-October and see Ohio State versus Oregon in a conference game.
You're going to be able to do that anyways.
But that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. It's already happening. Is that's there? Yeah. So I think I would love for something like this to work in college football. I would love to see a Premier League type setup.
See, I I don't think that could ever happen. I know a lot of people are like, yes, do it. So that way the likes of Vanderbilt and IU can go away. I just I don't see it, because ultimately all the money then will just go to the Premier League, and there will be nobody will pay any attention at all to anything else, even the BCS that you call the championship league.
Right.
That would not, it would not matter, other than what, maybe one game a year to determine who won that division or that tier to potentially move up. That is the only game that would matter. Everything else from there on down, nobody would pay any attention to.
But what's the difference between you saying that and being like, hey, you can either watch the Big Ten on Peacock or you can watch the Pac-12 on the CW? You know what I mean? Like, that already exists, where, we've kind of relegated, which conferences matter, because that's what all the Premier League would be, is just one big conference.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
because you've already said, like, okay, well, we're gonna put the Big Ten and the SEC on ESPN, Fox, and Peacock and NBC. CBS now has the Big Ten. What guess who's not on the guess what games are relegated to the Pac-12 network? I know the Pac-12 and Big 12 are on Fox too, but I mean, you already kind of have that with the way it's constructed now with the SEC and the Big Ten. You've already got kind of the conferences that the big TV brands want to actually go to, and then they're like, yeah, Pac-12, you can beat it to the CW or whatever they were.
Well, see, for me, I don't ever see this happening, because every other sport has their conference, and every other sport, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, all it take in college football, all it can take is a couple bad injuries, and you have a horrible season, and all of a sudden, boom, you're demoted.
Yeah.
Like Alabama this year just missed on finding the right fit for quarterback. They're going to be demoted.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, they'd come right back up maybe the next year. I don't know. I think it would end up making the haves and the have-nots much, much greater. And the effect it would have then on every other sport that schools are. I mean, it would be a killer. Like, if you look at Purdue, for instance, Purdue is right up there near the top in the basketball one you mentioned. They're in the championship tier. By the Purdue football team being in the second to bottom tier and not receiving the money that they're accustomed to receiving, that whole athletic department falls into shambles. That goes down to the basketball program as well, everything else. And I don't think you would ever see anything like this, because of the money and what it means to other sports. And also, big time thing with Title IX, even though when it comes to funding. And also, I don't think you would ever see the premier teams agree to this. They have Alabama's played the toughest non-conference schedule I think I've ever seen them play. And for the fact they went on the road to USF is
I didn't even know that was happening. That was weird.
Talk about a wacky season. But I mean, I don't think SEC programs would really truly buy into something like this, because they have to have those bottom feeder teams. They don't want to be like, they want to be, buffed up and we're good. And then they end up only playing like 4 games a year against legit talent up against their legit talent. Week in and week out, I don't think those programs would go for it.
Yeah. Well, on that,
that's been a big argument with creating that, like, the top programs breaking away. Like this has been an argument that's been brought up here recently. Like, hey, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, these schools bring in enough money on their own that they could legitimately break away and just have their own thing. But then it's like, they really don't want to have to do that. They don't want to have to play each other consistently. Because then it's like, all of a sudden it's like, well, Michigan just went 0-4 against all these other top programs. And that just, it's crushing to a program that, I don't know. These big time programs also like to pad their stats. Let's be honest. Like they love scheduling them some Ball State.
Yeah, it was funny. We'll end on this one thing that I thought was really funny that I told my parents the other day is I was like, one thing that I remember Colin Cowherd was like talking about doing away with the NFL preseason. He was like, the college football doesn't have a preseason; they just start week 1. And I'm like, what do you call Notre Dame, Tennessee State? What do you call Georgia, Ball State? That's essentially a preseason game. I know some of those schools lose their preseason game, but but I was like, what's Purdue, Ohio State, Western
Purdue
Kentucky?
Gave up like 2.5 million dollars in their 2 losses this year to bring in Fresno State and Syracuse, like some huge number that they paid both of those schools, and to take 2 L's. So yeah, I mean, it happens.
Well, we have been, talking about this for quite a while. I think we need to wrap it up here. But yeah, a good discussion. I'm glad that you sent me that tweet because I definitely got the old juices going. And like I said, now I blame you because I actually want this to happen. But that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Thank you guys all for hanging out. Remember, you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. Go to our Twitter page at 3C Media Sports. If you're on YouTube right now, go to the TikTok channel. Even if you're not on YouTube right now, if you're listening to this, go get on TikTok because we've got that over there. We've been live streaming all of the high school games. Not high school games. We've been live streaming our reaction to the high school games. Every week on TikTok. So go hang out with us over there. Then if you see us on TikTok or you see any of our stuff, go over to the YouTube channel. If you're on the audio side of things, go over to the YouTube channel. We've got some content going up on the channel. You guys have been showing it some love. We appreciate that. Remember, you can listen to us every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Wherever podcasts can be heard, you can hear the Crash Course Podcast. You can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87.
Next week, we'll be talking more college football as we're going to be a month into the season. But until then, have a good one, everybody.